Hey y'all, it's your legal bestie, attorney Simone. I am live from the Diddy trial, but I didn't want the content to stop. So here's a breakdown of how Gina got her secret settlement. This is from last week, so I kind of compiled it together, but you'll see. Let me know what questions you have in the chat, but this is a breakdown of how Diddy is working out secret settlements both for Gina and other witnesses that the defense is particularly concerned about. Let me know your thoughts in the chat. Drop your comments down below. I'll see you on the lunch break and at the end of the day for a full breakdown. Black girls getting their shift together. I've been on that podcast. I really enjoyed it. It says, because Puffy is so dangerous. Do I think anyone who testifies will be in witness protection? I'm going to speak on that right now. Y'all, we going to shake. This is important. Shake that Astro Glide. Whenever I don't have a bell. So whenever I got somewhere I want to be like, woo, 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 we're going to shake the Astro Glide, okay? Y'all hear it. The prosecution is actually very concerned that Diddy will be messing with these witnesses. In fact, some of the most significant ones, like the named victim 1 through 5, named and addressed in the indictment, they have security with them. My understanding is there's security, and they even have trackers on them. Like, you know how you could have like a air tag so that they come up missing? Yes. Even like it's serious business, because word is from my inside source, he has been tampering with witnesses. And I want him to get caught, so I want him to continue. So I don't want to speak too specifically on the kinds of tampering, but I'll say this because I've mentioned this before. Remember, tampering with witnesses is also one of the predicate offenses. It is number 4, D, tampering with a witness, a victim, or an informant. He's continued to do this because you got to remember, Diddy doesn't play fair. He wins first, deals with consequences later. Think about how he won the lawsuit with the criminal case where he was facing time with Shine. No, I don't know about tampering with jurors. I do know the allegation is tampering with actual witnesses. In addition, it's my understanding that one of the things that he's doing is that he's offering civil settlements, big time civil settlements to some of the key prosecution witnesses. And here's how he's doing it. Now, mind you, he's not responded to most of these people at all. Here's an example. With John, her lawsuit was filed last freaking September, which meant his answer was due around within like 30 days. He didn't file what needed. He hasn't filed anything but the day before she's supposed to testify, or the day she is supposed to testify, he files a motion to dismiss it. Well, what he's been doing with the civil witnesses, so that the ones that have civil lawsuits, is he's been going to them and he's been saying, listen, we'll give you some money, but here's how we're going to do it. We're going to give you a little bit right now, and then we'll give you the rest after the date of conviction. So he has actual provisions that say you're going to get a little bit, just a little bit to, wet your whistle so that hey, we're going to be good on this. Give you a little bit now, and then give you the rest of it after the date of conviction. Well, if you are being dangled 5 million, 10 million, whatever it is, right? And you are being told you're going to get the rest of it after the date of conviction, you think you're going to be eager to help get convicted? You really think somebody's going to help that man get convicted? Thank you so much, Ray Winsall, for that super sticker. Arbel, thank you as well. Y'all, my Cash App is at the bottom if you like that better, which is MISS Redwine, Miss Redwine, because I'm not married. Simone, I got picked for jury duty June 2nd, Bayhart County, and I want to be removed. First, I'm not exempt. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna speak to that shortly. Hold on. But so specifically, Diddy is going to those with civil cases. And I want you to think about it. Each of these people, these ladies, and even there's a gentleman, but I don't know that he's worried about the gentleman. It's the ones where he's worried about them testifying here. He's gone to their lawyers and he said, if you want to resolve this, we're open to it, but here's how we do the settlement. In doing that, it's clever, but I think it runs the line of ethical issues. Here's why. Because in his words, he's not saying don't testify, but you don't fucking have to. You don't have to say don't testify. If you're telling me the rest of my money will not be until after the date of conviction, or the date of conviction, whatever it is. In my mind, I'm like, well, hell, if he gets convicted, he's probably not going to pay me and won't. And you can't do anything about it and won't. And then he would be able, if you were called to the stand by the prosecution on cross-examination, if the prosecution is trying to prove up tampering with a witness on cross-examination, what do you think Brian Steele is going to say? Brian Steele's going to say, were you ever instructed not to testify by any of the defense team? And you'd say, no, I was never told that. Were you ever discouraged were you ever told from showing up here? No. Were you ever told to not respond to the subpoena? No. And this simply says you're going to get compensated after the date of conviction, correct? Yes, that's what I was understood. That's what my lawyer told me. And you know that there was this civil asset forfeiture. Here's the indictment, y'all. The indictment has this little forfeiture provision here that says that the government is seizing his stuff. So what the defense would be able to say is, oh, well, the reason that the civil settlements were structured is because, well, we're not sure till after conviction if he's even going to have access to those funds because the government's trying to take everything. You a fucking lie. You a lie. Here's why that would be a lie. It's because anything seized can be used first and foremost once the government wants it to be used to make whole victims. So to say, oh, we had to structure it that way because the government is trying to seize his assets and we didn't know what we could get access to would be very believable to jurors that don't understand the law. But it's not the truth. Because the truth is, if Diddy wanted to put, let's say he wanted to put 30 million to the side for victims, and all he had to do is write to the prosecutors. His lawyers would communicate with the prosecutors and say, hey, we've got this stock over in this account. We want to shift it over to the government. And we just want to ask the government to hold that. We're using that for negotiations. Any objections? Not a goddamn one. Because in the order of priority of who gets paid what, why, where, and who went first, victims, civil or criminal, go first. I know this because I was one of the first attorneys to sue R. Kelly for civil offenses under the same New York law Diddy is being civilly sued under. And I picked that state and that law because of the structure, how it awards treble damages if it's a gender motivated crime, and it covers attorney's fees. But what's also an issue is that it creates an awkward position for the client, because when your lawyer is hired for your civil case, that civil lawyer, I know because I'm one, we only get paid on what money we get for you. So these attorneys that are out here representing these clients that are alleged civil victims of Diddy, they really have an incentive to be like, yeah, client, go ahead and take the money, because you can't get 40% of nothing. You can't get 40% of nothing. I've even heard of situations where these witnesses were then told, well, you can't be forced to testify. The hell you can't. That's what a subpoena is. But it puts them in a precarious position because you've got a lawyer here that only gets paid on the money they get for you. You've got, let's say, as an example, 10 million on the table, but you're told you'll get, let's say, 100,000 now, which if your lawyer is going to get 40%, that means you get 60K, your lawyer gets 40K now and today, and the rest of the 10 million, you don't get till after the date of conviction, let's say 24 hours after the date of conviction. What the heck does that incentivize? So when the question was, it started with the question of, do I think that the witnesses are going to be a witness protection? The answer is no, but they have security. My understanding is they have security. They're being placed in secure places. Like when they come to New York to wait for their turn to testify, they're kept safe. They're watched by federal agents. And they're also even have trackers to help track. What's Diddy's lawyer's fee? When it is a civil case, it is against the law of all states to charge a criminal defendant to represent them under a contingency for ethical reasons. So Diddy's lawyers are charging, I think I estimated with one of my friends who does this type of law, probably about $3 million a month is probably his legal bill. His attorneys, various ones, charge $1,500 an hour, $2,000 an hour. Yeah, he's likely paying around $3 million per month for the defense in this trial. Can the money that they're getting, can they get that money on the back end? Hold on. Can the money be given to a reputable third party to hold for someone until a certain date? So what that would be with escrow. And so us lawyers, we all have trust accounts. So what could happen is they could put it in a trust account. But the problem is, what are you making the money contingent on? It's either a release or not. If you are making the money contingent upon their testimony, that is like first year law school, absolute proof of tampering with a witness. So what I'm explaining is that, because the question was, should we be in fear of these witnesses over this holiday weekend? Perhaps some of them coming missing, not coming up, etc. And the answer is yes. You all, with someone like a Diddy, always, because it's already been rumored that he's been trying to settle with some of these women, and maybe the men too. I only know, I'm thinking women because the majority are women. Settle with some of these people who have civil cases pending. I don't think he's doing this with Tony. He ain't doing this with none of Tony Busby's class. I tell you that for sure. I'm talking more the Ginas, those kind of people. He is offering them that when they settle, that he do a settlement prior to, he's trying to get everybody to settle prior to their time coming up to testify. And then say, okay, we'll give you this amount now and we'll give you the rest after the date of conviction. So that when they take the stand and the government tries to be like, did he tamper with you? Didn't he offer you money? Wasn't it a bribe or was it a bribe? Because that could be bribery. On cross-examination, Diddy's legal team is going to sit up there and say, no, this wasn't a bribe. The reason the money was split is we gave her a certain amount beforehand because we wanted them to know this was good faith and that his money is all tied up because of legal expenses and the cost of appeals and and that's how come he couldn't give the rest till after the date of conviction. And they use words like date of conviction to imply like, oh yeah, he thinks he's going away, so you may as well get a settlement secured before he goes away, because after that, who knows? He's going to be focused on fighting for his freedom, so he's not going to be focused on any of the civil stuff. Watch out for witness tampering, because here's the other thing. As a civil attorney who does this in my sleep, escrow for bribery, right? As a civil attorney who does this in my sleep, one thing that struck me odd was this. Generally, whenever you file a civil lawsuit against someone in their allegations like these that are then picked up and turned into criminal charges, one of the first things a defendant does is they stay the civil cases. Stay is an S-T-A-Y. That's because under the law, you can't be forced to testify in a civil case while you have a criminal case pending, because you have that right to plead the fifth, that prevents you from testifying. That's because in a civil case, you have to testify. You can't plead the fifth in a civil case. You can't do it. You can't plead the fifth in a civil case because pleading the fifth is only where there's a risk of going to prison. So in a civil case, there's no prison on the table. It's just money being paid. And that's because if you do a deposition in the civil case, because it's sworn under oath, under perjury, they could use your deposition in the civil case to get you in the criminal, basically. They could bring it up. That is exactly what happened to Bill Cosby, and it's why Bill Cosby's case was overturned on appeal, set aside, and he can never be tried again. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to Bill Cosby's lawyers. We're going to tell them, hey, we're not pursuing you criminally, because at least that will force him to move forward in your civil case. And Cosby's lawyers were like, no. The only reason he even did that depo is the prior DA said they would never, ever prosecute him. So in other words, I was surprised that Diddy never stayed the other cases, the civil cases, just to stop the financial bleeding. Because if you stay a case, it just stops your case. It says, I'm going to stop all my civil cases that are pending till after the criminal is resolved. It prevents him from having to waste money on lawyers on the civil side until after the criminal is resolved. He didn't do that. Now it makes sense. He probably didn't do that because he knew he wanted to last minute try to negotiate these tampering with witness like settlements. If your case is stayed, you could still organize a settlement with a stayed case, but it's a little different. You don't know as much evidence. You haven't moved as forward. But by him continuing the civil cases throughout this point, it allows his team to better go back to the significant witnesses and their civil lawyers and say, hey, let's go ahead. We're going to see if we can eke something out for you because, if he's convicted, he's not going to have any more money. They're going to freeze his assets. He's not going to be able to settle with you. More than that, he's not going to be focused on pursuing any civil cases. He's going to be focused on appealing any criminal verdict, and that's why. So watch out. Hit that like button, y'all. Hit that subscribe as well. One of the vloggers who's been in the courtroom today says that Mark Agnifilo is just so certain Gina's not coming. And he keeps saying, she's not coming, she's not coming. And the prosecution is kind of like, how you know? How do you know? Unless one of y'all got one of these deals with her. How you know? We need the feds to trace all the money. But I believe he's got two sets of legal teams. Keep this clear. He's got the criminal legal teams, and then I believe he has a completely different set of civil. Remember this. When Diddy started with the negotiations with Cassie, he had Mark Garagos. Mark Garagos was his lawyer saying he hasn't done anything. This is a shakedown. La-di-di-di-di-da. On the civil side. That was Mark Garagos. Mark Garagos is saying he's not part of the criminal team, but he does do the podcast with Harvey Levin, that stuff, right? So my point is his civil lawyers are doing on their side, they're doing their best to tread the ethical line. They're so close to that line. The ethical line of how to settle without it being tampering with a witness. The component of that is setting up a settlement where you get a portion now and you get a portion after the date of conviction. And they called it date of conviction with the implication being, he's expecting, he wanted to do right by these people and he's expecting that he may be convicted. And that, Your Honor, is why he was trying to work out these amounts with these people. Nah, because on the side, we know if the agreement is my 10 million is contingent upon conviction, these people ain't helping. These people ain't helping.